Thank you for joining us today on Salon Sleuths. My name is Leslie and my co-host is Melissa. I want to remind all of you who listen to us on a regular basis, or maybe this is your first time, to please follow, subscribe, like, share, whatever the case may be for the platform you are on. Now, we do post these episodes on YouTube with video for those of you who'd rather watch. We enjoy making these shows, but unless you interact with us, we're not sure if you do. So please jump on your social media and let us know. You can find us under Salon Sleuths on almost any platform. Now, we hope you enjoy today's show. Thank you.
Can you show her your hands?
Yeah, I got my hands, my little cripple hands up here.
So you can't move your hands.
I can move my wrists back. So that's like how I grab things, is I move my wrist back, and even if you relax your own fingers and you move your wrist back, your hand will just naturally close.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's what I use to grab things. But individually, like, no, I can't move my each digit on its own. Yeah.
Okay.
But so that's the injury side of me. And yeah, I've been living on my own for the last 3 years now, and just kind of exploring, newfound independence. It's like going off to college again, right? You escape the the parental household, and you kind of learn how to live on your own. I'm going through that now. So.
And when you say you said a C5 injury.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean exactly?
So it's the C5 bone is, if you can feel on the back of your neck, you have all these vertebrae. If you count down 5 bones, that's the bone that had the impact on my spinal cord. And so the neck, the spinal cord in general is obviously very sensitive, but your ability to move is very much dictated on where the injury happened on your spinal cord. So I'm kind of lucky to be a C5 as far as quadriplegia, because if I was 1 up, then I wouldn't be able to, move my wrists. If I was 2 up, I wouldn't be able to move my arms probably. And C1, you're usually on a ventilator for the rest of your life. So, it's a matter of inches. And so in that regard, I'm lucky that it was the middle of my neck where I have some hope of independence and being able to survive on my own, essentially.
Yeah. For sure. Well, from your logo, when I was looking at it, it almost looks like neck down.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest,
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't tell. And then when I heard you talk about you prefer fist bumps versus handshakes, I was like, well, maybe you can't use your arms. Like, I wasn't sure what that meant. And then I figured only people who have been through this or know somebody would understand what a C5 was.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And it's easy for me to kind of gloss over that, because it's been my life for the last, 5 years.
Well, I thought that's why we would talk about it, because there's probably people like me who have no idea. And I thought, okay, well, we can just clarify a few things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so quadriplegia, it's quite the range. And with the promo in the video, in the logo, I do kind of split the difference between going in that power chair that you see in the logo and in the promo, which is this, this big kind of clunky chair that I could go long distances in. But when I don't need to go around, anywhere too far, or I'm not driving anywhere, then I prefer to be in just like your typical manual wheelchair that you would see around and stuff. So I have the ability to move my arms. My shoulders are pretty much full strength, but shoulders and up are good. It starts to just wane as you work your way down my body a little bit.
Okay. Chase, who are you?
Well, I'm Chase Clausen. I'm the other co-host for the We Ain't Broke podcast. As I mentioned in the first episode, I kind of identify as an orphan really over the last 11 years, and really been focusing most of the first couple of episodes on really discussing my early childhood, and a little bit divulging into the intro of the divorce and all the way up till 5th grade. And hopefully this in a couple weeks we'll be able to divulge a little bit more into 6th grade through high school. So yeah, I haven't given too many details as to the how or the why, or the what or the when, but so far that's all is that I'm this guy who identifies as an orphan and who's gone through divorce, and during that time I've had a little troublesome of a early life. So
Yeah, our
that's all you
original
get.
our original podcast name was going to be Cripple Orphan, and then at the
The
last minute,
orphan and the
Jason and I were like,
cripple.
yeah, and we're like, that might be a little harsh for some
Yeah,
listeners.
like
So.
I don't know if we really want to like
Right.
constantly identify as that. Like, oh,
Right.
it's the
Well,
orphan
when
and
I
the
tell
cripple.
people
Hey,
your
what's up?
name, like when I say, they're like, it's perfect. But I do like
Mhm.
Cripple Orphan. I actually kind of like that.
I
But
mean, it's powerful, but it's
Yeah.
like it's the guys from the Cripple Orphan podcast.
yeah,
Right.
it has a little ring to it. It already is like intriguing. What does that mean? But
Mhm.
Yeah.
anyway, yeah,
It's all about how we self-identify, right? I mean,
Yeah.
a little bit for sure.
yeah.
Well, funny Chase is, there's a couple of like you're kind of touching on sometimes that when I first met your mom, it was like around 98 and 99.
Okay.
And I just remember her like getting really frustrated with your dad on the phone,
Yeah.
and at work, because the phone's like in the salon, okay, in the main area, and she would just be like kind of overwhelmed. She'd have to go in the back and like, take a deep breath and stuff. And I also shared how I met her for the first time. Like I was super, like when I met your mom, like, and it's funny because as we see our parents, we see them as these people that know everything.
Yeah.
They
They're
have all
gods.
this knowledge behind them when they're really just an older version of us.
Yeah, we think that
They went through the
these
same
perfect
things we
images.
did. They had fights with their friends, and they, stole each other's sweaters and sweatshirts and, all of that stuff. They did all of that. But it's really hard to see our parents in that light. And it was funny, after my mother had passed away, I had met up with her best friend. And then she told me some stories about my mom that I had no idea. I had hippie parents,
Mhm.
Okay, so growing up, my family was all in Texas. And my parents,
Where in Texas? Were they in
so
Austin?
my no, they're not, they're like in the armpits, two different armpits of Texas. One was El Paso, right next to
Wow.
Juarez, which we
Mhm.
used to just walk across the border and have lunch. You would never go there now. And then the other one was Lubbock, Texas, which I believe the Dixie Chicks are from, or Dixie
Mhm.
Chicks are from. And that's where my parents had met. But what they had done is they kind of separated from the family and moved up here to be hippies. Meanwhile, like my whole family gets to go to Texas A&M and go to the, the country clubs and all of that. But because my parents wanted to be these hippies, like I kind of lose that
Mhm.
that chance. And then to them, like college
Mhm.
wasn't super important because as long as you're happy and as long as you're doing what you love,
Yeah.
but then you're
Right.
like, but I'm limiting what I can do without that college education, And so that's why I'm really trying with my own kids to like push them to college or whatever, But I can't even remember why I'm telling you this story. Oh, because we put our parents on these things. And then
Yeah.
when somebody tells you a story, you're like, oh my gosh, they are really just like us. Like we are
Mhm.
just trying to
Mhm.
figure it out as we go.
Right.
And so, and it's just funny that like Chase and I were somewhat friends. I would consider you a friend. I would,
Yeah.
I text you about random stuff anyway.
Yeah.
But I also knew your mom, and I knew her as probably differently than you had. And I just remember her coming in one day, and she was really upset because your dad had given his girlfriend engagement boobs. Does that ring a bell at all?
No.
It wasn't
Not
a
at
ring.
all.
She just got
Oh my
engagement
gosh.
boobs, and I was like, what is that? And then she's like, and I was like, oh, and we were all just kind of laughing about that. And this was around 1999, so like that's why I was in my head. I was doing all the math of all these different
Engagement
moments
boobs.
that I had with her, where I felt like were significant moments in my life, but with her,
Wonder if Dane
And-
knows about those.
I don't
Right.
know. I was trying to like do the math with you, like, oh, then your dad got this girlfriend. I'm like, well, the timing's not quite the same, but then again, I don't know. And I don't want to talk about
That's
my
awesome.
other things until you get to that time on your podcast, like to, share some of the things that I remember. And honestly, like, I don't know if that's going to make things better or worse for you, So
What with what you share?
yeah, a little bit.
I think I think it's good. And I think that's kind of what's been so fascinating for me, at least, with the last 2 weeks and Egan and Alex and I sharing, these moments in time is, I mean, look what we're doing right now. We're already on another podcast, being able to discuss a portion of our lives. But I'm really fascinated by the fact that, like, we get to bring stories up of people who are past and who have been past for 11 years. And I've said this to Alex. What's been really great is I get to bring my parents back to life. But what I'm also finding is these thoughts and these ideas are very much alive and well in other people. And I don't know if you wound up getting a chance to talk to Teresa, but Teresa, the person that I reached out to with their wedding photos last week, she went on this tangent about how she had a dream about my mom the other day, and I don't think that would have been communicated had we not been taking these steps with this podcast. Right. So it's, being able to hear this other side has been really kind of a gift, even if it at times has been overwhelming or tough to really listen to.
Well, and I think just hearing more stories and a little bit more glimpse into their lives is also kind of nice. Like, and maybe it will make sense some of that stuff. Like the story that I was shared from my mom's best friend, she's shared this like really crazy story, and I was like, yeah, makes sense. Like, not anything that I would have expected, but I'm like, it all kind of fits in, and I get it. Like, and I was like, oh. Yeah. Like thinking back, you're like, oh, of course that's what happened. I had no idea. But anyway, I want to go to Alex for a minute because, I used to have a client named Alex, and he was in a wheelchair.
Oh, no way. That's not fair. There's only supposed to be one of us.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, when I Google his name, there's some like wrestler with the same name, but then I had to go, Alex, his last name, and then wheelchair. But the thing was, he was a con man, and I didn't know it at the time.
Ooh. No way.
Yeah, there's a whole story behind him. And so that's kind of like our salon sleuths. People come into our salons, and we have these like crazy stories because these are all individual lives of people.
Right.
Right.
So then some people talk about ghosts because that's what I love. And so those come to me. And then, but some people have these like crazy stories. So I think one day I'll have to do one about Alex, but so it was funny because I would bring him back to the salon, and we had this like playful little relationship with, within the business. So I would basically do a pedicure on his hands because that's where the calluses were. And that's where, like, they would just get dirty from the wheelchair and stuff. So I would basically do a pedicure on his hands and a manicure on his feet because they were so soft, but he also can't cut his own toenails. So he would come in and, oh my gosh, when you're at the grocery store and somebody runs a cart into the back of your legs?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and you're just like, what the heck? So he would do that with his chair. And I would turn around and be like, what? And he would smile. So I'm like, oh, he didn't do it on accident, right? So, but once he, transferred it to the pedicure and I would put his feet in, I would grab behind his knees and yank him forward. So he's like going to fall off of his chair. And then I would just do the same smirk back at him. So we had this like little playful thing. And I think for me, I felt like, he was just like anybody else. He's just now in this chair, but he was 16 when he had his accident, and he was drinking and driving. And I had asked him a question once, and I want to ask you the same thing. And I want to hear what you would say, but I asked him, when did he realize that you would never walk again?
Oh, that's a good question. I think there's different layers to that. I think a lot of the credit could be placed on Craig Hospital, where I went for rehabilitation. Because when you first get injured, the first 6 weeks I'm in Mission Hospital. I'm essentially, we talk about it next episode, but just kind of like fighting for my life every day. And that was like the main focus.
So that was another question I had for you. But let's go back to that. I wanted to stop you for a minute because I do want to go back to that one. Okay.
All right. And, but at Craig, while we're rehabilitating, they make it pretty realistic. They say, maybe you are able to walk again. Let's always focus on that. But right now you're not. So let's focus on the muscles that you do have and work those out and make them compatible with living the life that you want to live as you are right now. And I think that mentality, I don't think I could have a specific date of being like, okay, you know, I've given up on the walking train. I don't even think I've necessarily given up on it today as a who knows what could happen kind of situation. But I think that acceptance happened in rehabilitation, being like, you're right, you know, if something does happen, that's great. But like, why wait around and get frustrated with the fact that you can't do something when you could actively pursue exercises or living habits or whatever that can just better your life in the current situation that you're
just
in.
Controlling the controllables.
Yeah. And so it was early on. And I do think it's because of just good guidance from my physical therapist and occupational therapists, who kind of work with you together in your exercises, and them just being, you know, honest, but caring, and guiding me down the right path.
Well, that's a good point, because when I met Alex, he was probably in his 40s, and his injury was when he was 16. And there was a time in there where he realized he would never walk, because I did Google C5 miracles, and there were people in there that were actually walking. And it would say like year 3, this guy was just, he had gotten to a certain point. And then, so, I mean, it was way past 3 years before he started even getting there. So it's like, to make that assumption that you would never walk again was probably unfair to even actually say that out loud. But there's always that option. We just don't know. And
it's not unfair. And it's, they typically say the spinal cord finishes healing after 2 years. And so the general consensus of naturally recovering to walking ability, that typically, that window closes after 2 years. So, I mean, you're totally accurate there. I always leave the window open because you never know when, you know, we'll have some crazy super scientist just be like, oh, we figured it out. But, you know, there's no reason in waiting around for that.
Yeah.
But.
Well, I read a book called My Stroke of Insight, or something along those lines. And Chase mentioned stroke last time. And this woman had this, she was really young, and it's this, I'm trying to remember the name of the book. It was incredible, but you know, she had this massive stroke, and it was like, she's like, people tell me I wouldn't be able to do certain things. She's like, I couldn't multiply and divide until year 7. She's like, because it's constantly reconnecting. So we don't know. I mean, they can say that, but we don't know really what to expect. But, okay, so Craig, you mentioned Craig a few places. That's a place?
Yes. So, and I haven't got into detail. I need to more so in future episodes. But yeah, so Craig Hospital it's in Denver, Colorado, in Inglewood, Colorado, so just outside Denver. And it is connected to Swedish Hospital, but it's an independent rehabilitation hospital with inpatient care. So, you know, the people that go there are some outpatients that like come in and do some work, but, you know, their main focus are freshly injured patients that live at the hospital for typically about 2 to 3 months. I'm an overachiever, so I stayed there 6 months. And they were actually originally founded as a tuberculosis recovery hospital. And then as time went on, they started to cover brain injury and spinal cord, and that's what they do today. And with my injury, I actually got both. So it was the perfect place for me to go. And it's a very unique environment, because in some aspects it's almost like a dorm room, you know, and then the other aspect is obviously just being in the gym and learning how to improve your situation. Yeah
Well, because Chase mentions being in a room at first years, like 12 people of the first years, and I was like, is that Craig? Like I wasn't sure, is that like first year injury people? Is this first year? I wasn't sure.
He was with that he was saying like if I were to go back to college and I am and let's say I'm in a wheelchair in that situation, And in that situation where I'm the only person in a wheelchair and I have to introduce myself and they say something about you, that was more about how I approach introducing myself to new people, which I kind of have to at some point recognize the situation being like, okay, some of you guys have probably never talked to anybody in a wheelchair before, and most likely never a quadriplegic. So it's something that I like to bring up in situations like that to kind of, kind of address the elephant in the room, which is my physical situation. And in doing so in a lighthearted manner, know that I'm comfortable with it. And it offers some level of comfort for them that they aren't, while we're talking, they're not constantly going to be like, am I going to offend him if I say this or this? It's like, I like to kind of poke fun at myself a little bit and be like, it's okay.
Yeah, you're really funny. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well, I have clients, and I have some that are of different races, and I'm like, seriously, I am probably going to say something that might be offensive, and just know I would never personally do that on purpose. Like, and just tell me if I am. But sometimes I think I'm funny, or sometimes, like they say, white privilege. I just don't even know what I'm doing wrong sometimes. And so
yeah,
I think when we do see people in wheelchairs, we wonder what had happened,
right.
And it's really none of our business. And I know we took some ASL classes, and it's really rude to ask somebody why they're deaf, or if have they always been deaf. That's just like a big no-no.
Really? Okay.
Even though we're always wondering, right? And also
Right.
when you're watching somebody doing sign language, that's also rude because you're listening in on their conversation.
Oh,
So
interesting.
there's certain things that I don't know. So like, do we go up to somebody in a wheelchair? Obviously, I'm not going to just walk up to somebody in a grocery store and be like, hey, so what happened to you? But like, can I get something down for you? Or, I just don't know. Like,
and I think that's the tough thing, because it is just dealing with individuals. Like, I can't say, just because I'm relatively comfortable talking about it, it's tough for even me to talk with another person in a wheelchair. Like, I go through the same thing. Like, even being in a wheelchair, I'm like, is it cool? I get a little more leeway, obviously, but I still wonder, like, okay, what's the bar that I have to abide by, essentially? Because
the situation,
some people are more, whether it's self-consciousness or it's just hard for them emotionally to talk about. I get that, obviously, but for me, because I do kind of want to carry this weight of normalcy, I think the earnest is on me to express a level of comfort with that person. I kind of offer a little vulnerability to let that person in the conversation.
Yeah.
Okay,
then the other note that I had written, Degrassi.
I don't know. I said Degrassi. I do not know if it's pronounced Degrassi or Degrassi. Okay. I've never actually seen the show, but
you haven't seen the show.
I know,
but you put a lot of credit towards that.
But everybody knows Drake. Everybody knows Drake.
Is it like a performance, or is it a movie? What is it?
So it's kind of like a teenage soap opera from Canada, and it was popular in the United States as well. It was on like what was it, Fox Family or one of those, like I don't know what the channel, ABC Family, yeah. And I remember my cousins were really into it, but that was kind of always the joke that people would poke fun at Drake for, was like, oh, you're this mega hip hop star, but we all know where you came from, which is Wheelchair Jimmy and Degrassi. So
yeah. Well, I was a cool mom award. I did drive my daughter and some friends up to a Drake concert in Seattle.
Oh, there you go.
A couple of years ago for her. I gave it to her one of the holidays for her birthday or Christmas or something.
Yeah. Shout out to Aubrey, which is Drake's real name. He's like I said, longtime listener to the podcast, a patron saint of We Ain't Broke.
Yeah. Funny. That's funny.
Hey, Leslie,
yeah.
My mom also drove me up to Seattle once with some friends, my freshman year of high school, so we wound up climbing the fence at Quest Stadium, and we wound up playing football on the Seahawks field.
No
And
way.
what she said was, if you're gonna do it, you better do it now because you're not an adult, and this won't be on your record when you
That's
turn 18.
so funny.
She was
So-
kind of like that. Like, was that
Good
when
for
she
Jane.
fell
Wow.
asleep driving on the way home?
I mean, if she fell asleep driving, I'd like to think she would have crashed, but we never crashed.
There was one time, and I swear you guys were with her. I think she was living like Seattle or somewhere, and like she crashed against a guardrail and got up, woke up or whatever. But I was like, you were like on the road for like 10 minutes. Like you should have been driving.
Oh
It wasn't like you're like 2 hours into a drive and then fall asleep.
Like you were
you just
exhausted and you
left.
decided to drive.
Yeah, I swear. I mean, she probably, bumped the guardrail and then like got up. But I just remember her saying she was in a car accident on her way home. And I'm like, you just got on the road. Like,
Well, there you go. There's a story I didn't know.
yeah.
Right? I know it.
It's like, maybe that was it. Cause it was like, later on, and I don't know, it was probably one of you guys. She came over and she's like, I can't remember what it was, but there was like a little gorilla that would dance on the computer screen.
Oh yeah.
And she thought
Yeah.
I put it there.
No, you could you could hey, you could type a message and the gorilla would speak. I can't remember what the app was called, but Steve Wright and I had downloaded it, and it was super. I think it was like a purple gorilla too. It was really weird.
And she thought it was just like, because she didn't really understand computers very well, and she was like, I don't know. She thought I sent her something because she just thought like when you got.
She was worried about the dancing purple gorilla.
Yeah.
Like I can't get it off the screen.
Chase just terrorizing your mom. Unbelievable.
Well, it wasn't for her. It was for me.
Library on their computer, and there was a naked lady in the corner. She's kind of transparent, but she was doing yoga. And so I was like, that's interesting. And then looking around, did somebody put this on here? And they're watching my reaction or whatever. So at the end, I went to the library and I'm like, you might want to go look at that computer. There's like a naked lady.
That was Chase too, I think. That was Chase and Steve Wright also.
It probably
My
was
bad.
all along. Yeah. So what I wanted to tell you about Alex, when he told me that he knew that he would always be in a wheelchair, was he was no longer dreaming of walking. So when we have flying dreams, he would have walking, and he goes, I would have dancing dreams where he would be dancing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think he said once he realized when he started dreaming that way, that he would always be in the wheelchair. What do you dream? Do you dream?
Well, I do dream, and I dream both ways. I'd say most of the time I actually am walking in my dreams, or kind of like floating, where it's like kind of that first person perspective. You're just kind of floating through a situation. But most of the time I am walking, but I'd say probably 30% of the time I'm in a wheelchair. I do have a lot of dreams though of being able to walk, knowing that I can't walk, and it's like it's usually like a stress dream. It's usually
So
like
pretty
I
lucid,
haven't a little bit, but less lucid, more of like I'm standing up in the chair, or I'm standing up out of my chair and like walking around, and I know I shouldn't be able to, but like I am for whatever reason. So it's kind of like shaky legs a little bit, like it's an uncomfortable kind of thing, and usually a little bit stressful. But that's interesting. I haven't actually, so maybe I'll get back to you if I ever just stop having dreams of that. Maybe that's like a turning point.
No, I don't want you to. I want you to like walk.
Yeah.
Well, and I know Claudia's had a few dreams of Egan walking again.
Oh man,
so
Claudia's dreams are just crazy. I mean, the one that I'm thinking of, Chase, I've told you a few times though, that she told me when I first got back.
Mm-hmm. I don't remember it, so you might need to retell it.
So when I got back from Craig Hospital, so this is 7 months later, Claudia told me that she had a dream that our friend group were all like kind of standing in a circle. And this is the night that I got injured, or like soon after. Maybe it was the night before she had heard about it or something. And I stepped out into the middle of the circle and I looked at her and I was like, everything's going to be okay. And that was the dream, which like blew my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So you're that type of person though. Like you've been always that person. You've made everybody comfortable. all the time. So no wonder, like, she knew that about you way before. And so, like, that was so natural for her to dream that. And you're still that way.
Right? But this is even before she knew that I was
that's
injured.
even weirder though. But for you to give her comfort even in the dream,
Oh yeah.
that's no surprise. But I get what you're saying now. She didn't.
But thank you though. I appreciate it. I mean
weird.
I've always, right? Maybe I'm a people pleaser to a fault.
But I love that you're still that way. Like that never changed about your personality. You know, I think
I think it almost went into overdrive because I loved the life that I lived, and I wanted to hold on to that as tightly as I could, or as much that I could. So I knew the first step to getting there would be a level of acceptance with myself and being able to poke fun at myself, because I don't want to create awkward situations with my friends or with anybody that I meet. And so to do that, you have to feel as the least amount of awkwardness about yourself within yourself too. So I think that was a huge focus of mine early.
I think both of you have missed the mark too. I think you guys could both be amazing therapists. Like if you want, I'm not kidding. You think you might both be laughing?
No, I think that a lot.
You would even be better. But I'm like just listening to you guys and the words that you choose and how you express things. Like I just think you naturally are really great listeners, and I think you also could help so many people that I don't know. I think if you have school in your, in your future, or maybe you would, that would be a really great thing.
Well, thank you.
Like,
yeah.
I just think personally, well, let me think.
We could bring back Cripple Orphan again as a title.
I did.
It could be the Cripple Orphan Therapy Center.
Yes, that would be your business name.
Right.
Well, 5 years ago, one thing that stuck out to me when you and Brian were hosting a Halloween party, I thought about how great of a host you were, Alex, and I was like, I feel like I said this to you, that you're gonna make an amazing adult host, and now you're a co-host of a podcast.
There we go.
You're telling everybody in their dreams that
50% of a good host right now.
It's just what you do.
Well, thank you. I mean, that was a fun party. I put in so much effort in that party, and Brian put in 0% effort. Nice. So I will gladly accept that compliment.
I put in a lot of effort too. I showed up as Sting from the
did.
NWO, and no one knew who I was.
And you were getting so frustrated with people because
you're Gene Simmons. No, I'm not Gene Simmons.
Jason's
not at all
so fed up with that part. I'm surprised he didn't leave early.
There were two people that knew who I was, and Claudia had mentioned that before. She's like, no one's gonna know who you are, and I was like, everybody watched wrestling in the 90s. Everyone's gonna know.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It wasn't the case.
Well, my kids will dress like that. I'm like, I don't know. I try to tell them the opposite, but
right. He was probably more upset that Claudia was getting proven right.
Yeah. True.
One more question, Alex, for you is, you did say that like you weren't sure if you were going to live during that time. And I wanted to know, was that real? Like, was that something you were thinking, or was it an actual thing that could have happened to you? Could you have passed away?
Yeah, for sure. Both. We go into it more in episode 3, but love to talk about it here though, because it was a combination of both. There was constant panic attacks. I was put on a ventilator in those early days just to make sure that I stayed breathing, but my lungs worked just enough to fight that ventilator. So I'd constantly be choking myself unintentionally, and then not know what to do. And I'd go into a panic attack and pass out. That wasn't necessarily like a life-threatening thing, but it was something that I feared every day. And was
like they almost wanted you to pass out so that you could just breathe easily.
Right. Yeah. Honestly, like they would just put in medicine to just try and relax me, and eventually it would knock me out. So that I felt like I was going to die through those. I had life-threatening things throughout. My heart stopped 3 times, and I also had a collapsed lung and had to get the big bag thing that you see, like that EMTs will have when they put the little mask over the person's face and you squeeze the bag. So Yeah.
And a chest tube, I'm guessing.
Chest, I had two chest tubes. I had a stomach tube. I was poked and prodded quite a bit.
And you had a couple infections too.
And I had some right. So then down the line, I almost died at Craig too because I got this super rare form of C. diff, which is a hospital-borne illness. It's like a bacteria infection, and usually when it happens, it kind of just makes you like really stomach sick overall. But for whatever reason, this form of C. diff started attacking my calcium levels, and so that was another. That was like way down the line too. This was like probably 3 or 4 months later. And so it was very strange, but that was super dangerous too.
Yeah.
But
so
at that point I was like not as scared anymore. It was more of just like another thing, but the nurses and the doctors were definitely concerned.
So I'm convinced that you're a cat. How many lives do you think you have left?
I don't know if I'm a cat or a cockroach, but if I'm a cat, then I got to be safe because I'm probably up to 7 or 8.
You're pushing it.
Yeah, exactly.
So Chase, tell us what's happening on the next episode because you guys drop on Mondays. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then we're Tuesdays. So no one's going to hear this till after you've already said yours. So
yeah,
we want people to listen to your third one, which will be already out. So tell us a little bit what's going to be on that one.
Yeah. I mean, this was kind of an amazing discovery that we had because originally we had plans about, discussing his story at Mission and then going into a little more detail with my transition from 6th grade up till about my junior year of high school. But what we pretty much found early on was there was just a lot of content that Alex was talking about. And, we almost felt like it would be a disservice if we cut like half of that and then, forced me to talk about, my timeline. So what we wound up coming up with was that this would be a whole episode just kind of predicated towards Alex's time at Mission because it's so impactful and because there was so many events. And it just adds so much more color to his story. So we felt that was really the best thing. And then hopefully the episode after that will really try and get into the weeds with my timeline of 6th grade till throughout high school.
It's really a bummer, like when your episode's over and you're kind of like left, like I have to wait another week. It's like this mini series that you listen.
We've got appointment television going.
Right.
We have appointment television going. It's great.
I turn on my notifications so I know when it's out. So I'm like
the carrot on the string.
Everybody else is like that. Like, so I think I'm so proud of you guys, really. And I love that you guys are doing this together. It's really funny because Melissa, who I do my show with, first of all, I like to tell people that I'm 5'4". I'm probably 5'3", maybe 5'2". I think I'm 5'3".
So that's not just a guy thing then.
Right.
I still say I'm 6 foot, even though I'm 4'10" now.
People in our lives, and so it's fun to be able to she's a little bit like me. I will just speak my mind, which also gets me in trouble. But also you would know if I'm mad or not mad by the look. But
you just ask for forgiveness later.
Yeah, kind of. But then I've also learned it's not also very acceptable in the little town that we live in to just. So I'm having a hard time balancing that, and especially balancing because I love the spirit world, and a lot of people don't even take the time to really think about stuff like that.
No.
And because I think people, and I hate to say this in our little community, they're very surface. Nobody really has a lot of feelings, and they're all about what they have.
It's a strive for comfort.
Yeah, and I just like to go deeper. I don't like those little mini conversations. I hate having conversations with drunk people. I don't drink at all, so it's really hard to even go there because I know it's not in depth and they're not going to remember. So I feel like I'm wasting my time even trying to explain to people why I don't drink or whatever things. But I do have a hard time balancing some of that stuff sometimes. But that's just the plan.
Well, so then, because that's fascinating, because I I think the same way. Like, I'm always like, how can I feel like I am creating a more deep and meaningful relationship with someone? And that's kind of how this podcast came to be, is because I was so adamant about trying to, pull that out of Alex. But like, so how do you do it in your life? Like, how do you find those meaningful, impactful relationships, or those moments in time where
It's
you
really
really feel
hard.
like you have a
It's hard
connection?
to find people like that who are willing to do that. Like, and so I feel like I have a bunch of people in my lives, but none that really know me and none that I really know. And then some people you let in and then you realize it wasn't real, or and so there is that hard. But the people that I do, I would say, like you, I could call you and like, oh my gosh, this happened today. And we call that authentic people who are willing to be vulnerable and tell you their story and to share it and then not judge you later. Right. There's so many people that will listen to you and then turn on you or talk about you behind your back about certain things. And honestly, like, I always say, if I talk about Alex to you, Chase, it would be something I would say to his face.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So as long as, and sometimes it would be hard to hear, but that's just who I am anyway. I'm going to, like, if I'm saying something that might be rude, I would probably say it rudely to them as well.
Right.
Like, so I just think it's hard to find people truly like that. And,
but it sounds like you need to live back east.
What's that?
Right. Yeah.
It sounds like you need to live back east.
Oh, I don't know if I like those people either.
I don't know, but you get some of that.
No one likes each other in the East,
you
though.
would hear it.
I don't know. It's a hard place to be. And but I do find the more that you do that, the more people are almost magnetic to that.
Yeah.
Because once I started talking about what I enjoy, like paranormal stuff, I get a bunch of clients like that. Right. It just starts to happen that way. And then I will say one little thing, and then I know if they're in or they're not. And then I just know I'm not going to talk about that to that person.
Yeah.
And your mom was really great about that. She was really, I called her like almost like a chameleon. And that's just how you are in our industry. You had to like adjust your personality to each different person.
Yeah.
And she was really good at that.
Like really good at reading the room and reading the situation. Yeah.
And you did talk about, what time is it? Okay, we have a little bit of time. You did mention, I know that your stepdad, there was some abuse there.
Mm-hmm.
You do know that it was also towards your mom?
So I didn't.
Yeah.
And I was actually going to ask you that, but it was a matter of finding the time. So I had a great conversation with my uncle this week.
Yeah. Okay.
And like, it's a conversation that I feel like I've never had.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, what's so fascinating about this. And I said to him, I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if he was doing that to my mom. I wouldn't be surprised one bit if she had some kind of, battered woman syndrome and she was just stuck in the middle and she didn't know what to do.
That's why she stayed. Like, it got to the point where she didn't see any friends. And if she, we lived right next door. You knocked too loud, I would open the door, right? And I remember she had come over one day and I, like, you're fine until somebody asks you, are you fine? Are you okay? And then all of a sudden you're like, ugh.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think that, like, I mean, it's not, I was too young to really ask that question, but I don't think that that's like, it's the tears of a clown. Like, my mom had the appearance and it was always about somebody else. And like you say that we would make great therapists. I really think my mom would have been a great therapist too. And it was, maybe you could even argue with, being in that industry that she was, by asking some questions with some of her.
I think we
clientele.
all are. And so no doubt that you're just a product of her, like, and no wonder you have the words that would soothe somebody in a when they needed it. Right.
Yeah.
But I did want to mention that to you because, you said, there was a phone call and it was no doubt him. But I think there's something psychological that happens with somebody like him who purposely targeted someone like her.
Right.
And she was weak when it was that far in. And there was, I could tell you what you and your brother suffered was probably terrible.
Yeah.
But I think compared to what she probably
did. Exactly. And I think that the difference was, and like, it's one of those times where I give myself a crap ton of credit for really stepping up and saying that. I think the difference is had my mom told my grandpa or my uncle,
Oh, things would be different.
I don't know what would have happened.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been good. It
No.
wouldn't have been. It wouldn't have. There still wouldn't be resolve. But the fact that he did reach out too really made me think that there were a lot of things that were out of her control in that situation,
Totally.
and that, you know, her psychology, you know, her psyche, her spirit was very much dampened, and you know, it's such a complex situation that there's no ultimate answer to it.
I think though the more that you know, the more of understanding you will have.
Yeah.
And like I could share things with you and I want to give them to you when you're ready and when you want them. But
Yeah.
like for me, like I'm not surprised because I knew ultimately that's probably what would have happened. But I was surprised when I heard, I'm going to get teary up. I'm trying not to right now. Because I thought I would feel that she was gone. And I
Yeah.
mentioned it that at my last one, like I felt like we were close enough that I would know them when she wasn't here.
Yeah.
And that was the part that was hard. But I did want to share that with you that it
Oh, I
was
appreciate
terrible.
that.
I think losing you was the hardest thing for her, and she never recovered from that. And
Yeah.
it was all from him. She also lost young life because of him. They asked her no longer to be a part of it because her house was unsafe.
Mm.
Because even after you were gone, there was stuff that happened in the house.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, and maybe we can go in more, and maybe you know from your uncle, but the house was no longer safe for lots of different reasons. But
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
and the other thing that I picked up on really early on, because we had Rocky, we had a Rottweiler that was he was a sweetheart. And after being gone for a period of time and coming back, he was no longer that sweetheart, which means that that abuse was being done on him.
Yeah.
And it was changing him. So there were a lot of signs that I was reading, you know, but I didn't have the word.
But you
And
were
I
too
was,
young. There's no way.
yeah,
Like, I mean,
you
if I
don't,
think
yeah,
back to who my mom was when I was in sixth grade, I had no idea. Like, you're just trying to like live your own life and like
Right.
get your
You're
homework
a
done.
kid.
Yeah.
yeah,
And it would be unfair to you to try to like be that parent and try to figure that out. Like,
yeah,
you know, and you shouldn't have. You're just a kid. Like, you be a kid, you know, and um it's just funny because, you know, we all struggle. We all have different things that we dealt with as children. Like, you know, feel like you are an orphan now, and then Alex has this other thing, and we all were raised a certain way, right? But then, oh gosh, what am I going to say with this? Sorry. I'm old and my brain doesn't always work.
It's okay. I'm young and my brain hardly works.
But we are all like, oh my God, whole point. We all have our own story, right? And we all have these things. Like, I had two parents that got along great. They were divorced when I was 1, but they remained best friends. And it
yeah,
wasn't, so this is where I'm gonna go a little bit with my mom's friend's story was, so it would not be weird that my mom would come over to my dad's house and her boyfriend and my dad and his girlfriend would go hot tubbing. You get what I'm saying? So that wasn't weird. I grew up that way. It wasn't
right.
until I was probably in middle school to high school that I realized, oh, most parents don't get along. That's so weird. Up until when my mom died, my dad would still come and stay at her house with her boyfriend, like, because that wasn't weird. Like, we all have our own stories, but
Yeah.
I felt abandoned. Like, I didn't have any parents,
Right.
even though they were both there and they were very close. Like, so we all have our things. But what I also want to say is,
But you also have that connection with the authentic that's so fascinating too. Is like, it sounds to me like your parents had a very authentic relationship with each other, and you know, you have that quality that's been passed on to you, which is really fascinating.
well, and I think the spirit side of things, when I feel like I have an understanding of like why we're here, where we go after this. And my dad really is the one who like brought that to me. But I feel like when we came into this world, we were going to be faced with these terrible, horrible situations and things, because in the spirit world, we don't experience what it is to be physical, what it is to like, because it's everything's there is like all you know, it's all spiritual, right? It's not in, you're not in a physical body. So we came into this world knowing we were going to be having these hard challenges. And some people forget that. And some people give up. You right?
Mhm.
But some of them, like, so I've had to pull myself together and be like, okay, you know what? I was up for this challenge. I can finish this. You know, I can do this. And so I think, and I think with Alex, like you had that moment when that person had passed away next to you and you're like, I got this. Like, I'm not that bad. Like, I'm still here.
Right. Right. It was right. It was like a, I attribute it to like a fight or flight mechanism. You know, it's like which way am I going to go? And I guess my fighting was, you know, thinking about something silly to make myself laugh in that moment, which was a level of acceptance. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's incredible. I mean, I would have just been, I'm out, right? Like so many people would, but like you're just a really strong person that, I mean, and you still are, you're still going. And yeah. And Chase, seriously, like, I don't know anybody like you.
I don't either. I don't either. I'm still trying to figure one out.
Yeah. It's just, I just feel like we're all here for a reason. And we chose to come into these physical bodies to experience all of this.
Yeah.
Right. And then we're just, you know, we have these goals. We may not remember them.
Yeah.
You know, but they're still there.
I'm feeling like with our podcast that I'm like an investigator and I'm pulling up a cold case file. It's it's really fascinating right now, especially with that information. Like, you know, I never had really the strong facts to, you know, to believe that was the case.
And I only have little things, right? But it could be a piece to some of the puzzle that you had. And as you go later into the year, like you guys contact me, I could fill in or maybe explain something, because there are probably 3 other, maybe 4 events that I find were significant in her life.
Right.
That I was just like, I'm not surprised. Like, you know, it's just
it's continuing to add depth. I mean, talking about breathing life into her, it's the full, you know, all of her, you know,
oh my God. Here's one more thing and then we'll be done. Okay. When your mom, I felt like was lost, right? So I was like, and I knew she loved church. So we went to all these really different churches. Oh my God, I have another story for you really quick too. So we were going to all these different churches, and then we found South Lake, right? And she enjoyed it. I don't know if she ended up enjoying it as much as I did, but I ended up staying there. And she still went to other churches, but I know that I would see her at South Lake. And I joined like a Bible study. And I knew that night I had to go out and buy this Living Bible. And it was expensive. It was leather bound, but I had to have like the best one and whatever. I go, and then the very next day, my mother-in-law comes over and gives me hers. And hers is better because she's already marked all the pages and it's great. But I had this brand new Living Bible that I just stuck in my closet. And it's probably still, it's not there anymore, but I still have my mother-in-law's, which I never opened, right? But I knew in my heart I needed one. So I'm in this Bible study, and this woman next to me is like, oh, I really feel like I need a Living Bible. I just can't afford one right now. I'm like, oh my gosh. So the next week I go and get this. I go, I actually bought this for you, not realizing at the time, right? So here's where I'm going with this. Your mother had given Lucy an outfit. And I told people that she wore it. She outgrew it before she even could get into it. But guess what? You're going to have a little girl, and that's going to be your
gosh, that's great.
She bought that for you. Like, you get what I'm saying? I'm getting chills just talking about that.
So are you out here, are you saying?
I'm saying you're going to have a daughter, and she's going to wear this dress that your mom bought for you. She bought it.
Yeah.
However many years ago for my daughter, she thought. It wasn't for my daughter. My daughter never even could wear it. She was too chubby. But your daughter's going to.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
I you know, like the last time I saw Joshua John, he had mentioned that there was a photo and that the photo would be on display eventually. And I like, you know, was very conscious about that, found like a photo of my dad and, you know, had it in a book on display. And it wasn't until a couple weeks after the wedding when I realized that my parents' photo was on display. And I didn't ever put that together until the, you know, weeks weeks after, and I was just so fascinated by that. Like, you know, Dane on the wedding day came and brought that photo, and then, you know, whatever happened, that photo just, you know, wound up on the mantle. So
Yeah, that happens. So things like that happen all the time. We just have to pay attention,
right.
because it's not just coincidence. Like, okay, I had this, I just told this story the other day, but my mom had passed away, and so did my father, but my mom had a watch, and I told Michael, like, I'll know that my mom made it to heaven when that watch starts working again. You had a dead battery. It's not going to work, right? It's never going to work. But this is years ago. Michael was going through something, and he finds the watch. So he takes his and this old watch to like Fred Meyer's or whatever, and had new batteries put into it. Then he's like blowing up my phone. He's like, you know, you got to answer my call. And I'm like, I found the answer. And I'm like, what? And he's like, I just wanted to let you know, I don't want you to go home and freak out that the watch is working because I put a new battery in it. I go, then I know she made it, because the watch isn't going to work on its own, but it needed Michael to get it there.
Yeah.
Right. And it wasn't right away. It was months later. I'm like, I know she's fine. It's all good. You know,
Yeah.
that's how it works. That's
it's
how
still,
it works.
yeah, it still works. Yeah.
Right.
There you go.
Right. So, I mean, I just think things like that happen. And I thought about that dress the other day. I keep moving it from one area to another and like this. And I'm like, you know, this isn't even my dress.
No, but you're what's interesting is you're probably moving it to places that keeps your mind active and conscious of that. And, you know, if and when the time's right, that light bulb's gonna immediately go off. And
Okay. But here's the thing. I have different bins for each of my kids, and I would have just put it in the bin.
Yeah.
It's not mine.
Right.
So I keep moving it because it's going to you.
Yeah. That's.
Anyway, I mean, we could talk all day long, and maybe we could retouch again after the story is a little bit more exposed and all of that stuff. But I am just super proud of you guys. Do a little closing up, like tell us to go to you, subscribe, all of that good stuff.
Hagen, what do you got?
All right. Well, yeah, everybody. Thank you very much, Leslie, first for having us on. It's been a pleasure. It's really nice to finally meet you. But yeah, you could tune in to We Ain't Broke podcast. We're on all the platforms and social media. Specifically, Instagram is kind of where we've been living recently, but trying to expand that a little bit better. But yeah, We Ain't Broke podcast is where you can get in touch with us, and feel free to reach out, ask questions. Chase and I love it. We love hearing what you think and just talking in general.
And by all platforms. Sorry?
We have a TikTok technically we have a TikTok.
Everybody's on TikTok.
Yeah.
I think we've posted one or two things.
We need to post these on YouTube as well. I think it would be good. But yeah, we're on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, Anchor,
Breaker,
Pocket Casts, Breaker, and Radio Public.
Awesome.